Welcome to the Agile Localization Podcast by Crowden, where we unpack the strategies and solutions that make localization fast, scalable, and efficient. I'm your host, Stefan Huyghe. Good morning from sunny and cold Texas. I was outside this morning taking a walk and it's freezing here. Where you are, Martina, my guest today is Martina Russo, longtime friend and well-known personality in the translation industry. I'm honored. And Martina, I take it that it's cold and snowy where you are too, because I think you're in where my parents live in Switzerland, in Ticino. They're not in Ticino, but they're in Switzerland. Welcome to the show. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself real quick to our audience?
Thank you so much for having me. Super nice to be here. And yeah, I am actually currently in Ticino and it's not sunny. It's something between raining and snowing and it's freezing. But yeah, I actually just arrived here 2 days ago. I was in Austria in Tyrol, in Austria for the past few months. And yeah, I run a pretty unique agency. We are called the Action Sports Translator. So as you can tell by the name, we do translation. We specialize in translation, but also copywriting and AI services for the outdoor sports and action sports industry.
Awesome. And so many of us follow you. We've been following you closely. I hope you're right. I think you had a little accident not too long ago. You're recovering, but that's all part of being the Action Sports Translator. I guess you're doing okay though, right? Reassure us.
Yeah, exactly. So I had a bit of actually two accidents, but the last one was the most serious one, where I basically plummeted down a 5-meter cliff because I didn't see it in very poor visibility conditions. So it's yeah, that was just a few weeks ago. So, but I feel much better now. So all good.
You look great. I hope that's an indication of your recovery. Let's talk a little bit about outdoor sports and your niche. As a high growth localization market, so much of the talk nowadays is about the riches and the niches, so to speak. So what signals first told you that outdoor or action sports could sustain a specialized language service for the moment?
So it's a very personal story, meaning that I, even before the whole niching down became more, let's say, popular in the last couple of years, back in 2018, I started, I think I was buying a pair of climbing shoes and I noticed that because I'm Italian, I was redirected onto the Italian version of the website of either the brand or the retailer that I was buying these shoes from. And I noticed how bad the translations were. And then, like, as a consumer, I started noticing that all of those, from smaller to mid-size to the bigger brands, all the translation, the multilingual content, and therefore my experience as a consumer, it was just so bad. And I thought, well, why? And can I fix this? Because at the time I had already been in the translation industry for maybe about 10 years. I was already running an agency in SaaS localization. And so I thought, let me try and do something about this, right? Because as a consumer, I was just like deeply, I don't know, it was awful, right? Having to switch, I think a lot of people can relate in different industries, but for me, especially as an outdoor consumer, having to switch back to the English version of a website to understand what I'm looking at. So yeah, so I started that and I did a little bit of market research. I see what I needed to do and what the brands needed in the space. And then I basically got started.
And here we are today. You're flourishing. How do you handle this wide range of brand styles in a field that blends adrenaline culture with technical gear? We'd like to know a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so what's really unique about this industry is that it's basically a mix of really creative marketing-oriented copy, but also extremely technical, right? And then each brand has its own voice. But also then you have, of course, to consider the cultural aspects of the actual market. So say the Italian consumer versus the German consumer, completely different, right? So it takes a lot of work at the start. So it's not the way that we work is not just a transactional model where we take source copy, English copy, or whatever the source copy is, translate it, and then deliver it. There is a whole lot of work that goes at the beginning, understand the brand. We get really integrated into the brand. We work a lot like an internal partner almost. That's of course external, but that's what our clients usually feel when working with us. So we really get integrated within their marketing departments, brand departments, and then from there we really understand what's the most important for them, what type of consumer for each market do they have, how do they need to be spoken to, and then from there we build the usual, right? The translation guidelines, the tone of voice guidelines, the glossaries, and then we build the custom teams for them. And then we just basically grow and have also like a very strict feedback loop where it's really important to take all of the feedback into consideration as we grow with the brand.
It's probably really important to have a TMS that has lots of flexibility and specialty options. And I would think you do a lot of things like terminology management, et cetera. Am I right? Is there a lot of specialized activities like that?
Yeah, exactly. So we are actually using one of them is Crowdin, two main TMSs. One is Crowdin and the other one is a competitor of Crowdin. And we tend to use Crowdin for more technical setups, for example, Shopify, which we specialize in. And then we use the other TMS for the marketing and additional types of content. And so, depending on what we need to do, we do a lot of terminology management, but also a lot of integrations to the client's tech stack. So it's really important for us that, first of all, the TMS that we use does have flexibility within the integration. So being able to connect it with APIs, but also if there's out of the box integrations, that's, it's always better and more useful.
What type of content tends to cause you the most friction and problems when it's translated by generalist vendors, you think?
What type of content? Well, we don't really work with generalist vendors, right? So for us, we don't see the friction ourselves, but what we see from our clients and why they come to us, it's anything which really has any sort of, it needs to be authentic. And the problem within the outdoor industry is that if you have never been on the mountain, you've never skied, you've never, hiked, you don't know what it means to suffer. All of these activities imply that you have to suffer to a degree, or, you are climbing and you don't know what it's like to be shaking on the wall with the last quick draw, 2 meters below you, that you don't know what that feels like. So you can write or translate about that, but then it's just going to come across as completely inauthentic. And also, the terminology will very often be wrong. And there is only so much research that you can do because first of all, this terminology doesn't always live on the internet, but also it changes quite a lot. And it's also extremely regional. So you really need to be in the culture to understand what you're talking about and to then translate it properly. So that's where the brands that we work with, they come to us because they experience that type of friction. And that's what we solve for them.
Yeah, and you have the battle scars to show it. We can see on LinkedIn on a daily basis that you live the Action Sports life, so to speak. Are Action Sport brands more or less mature in localization processes, or maybe the question should be: do you think that niche localization providers are more or less mature in the localization processes compared to the mainstream consumer brands?
Wait, so the question is whether outdoor brands are more or less mature, right?
Whether niche localization providers are more prone to be in tune with the advanced localization processes than maybe generalist providers would be.
Okay, so maybe looking at the first question, like the first part of the question, which is the outdoor brands, they're definitely less mature. Even the biggest brands will be less mature than your typical, life sciences, companies, or in SaaS localization, which is where I was working the most before, a completely different industry, completely different structure. Oftentimes there isn't even a localization manager. So that's also why a lot of the work that we do is very process driven, and not just, so to speak, translation related. And then when it comes to niche providers, also really depends, right? What we do, and I know that not everybody is like us and vice versa. We are leveraging the most advanced technology that we can basically gets on the market, and really keeping up with the trends and the fast development of the technology, the tech market at the moment, including AI. I don't think every niche or boutique provider has the same scale or the same ability. It really depends how they're structured. I know a few that are more, on a much smaller scale. We are now at a scale that allow us to be there. So I think it really depends how the niche provider is structured.
Yeah. And I think your field has changed quite a bit too. There's a lot more focus on both sexes in outdoor sports. How is the search of women in outdoor sports influencing the tone and expectations of multi-marketing in that field?
So that's a good question. It's more about brands trying to be more inclusive and really, and it's not even just about women, right? It's about any gender as well. So and even way beyond that. But if we just talk about the genders now, I think a lot of brands don't necessarily understand the implications of inclusive versus non-inclusive language. So it's also something that we, as a strategic partner and not just a translation provider, we help them understand how, especially if they are targeting not just the male consumer, which is never the case, right? So and outdoor brands really do care about being inclusive. It's just when it comes into like the practical side of things. So for us as a strategic partner, it's always important to take a look at what they are doing at the moment once they start working with us, and then consult them on how they can be more inclusive in their language. So that's something that we help as a strategic partner. We help the brands that we work with to really make sure their copy, the way that they talk to the customers, is inclusive.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, because you were active as a SaaS LSP before. That's a lot broader. Then you decided to really specialize in outdoor sports. What convinced you that niche, or you being a niche agency, could outperform traditional vendors in this domain?
I mean, I could just see the results of what was out there, right? I didn't need to be convinced. I saw what's out there, and you can't really do worse than that. So I thought there's definitely something that's missing here in the chain of the supply chain of how the translations are being delivered to these companies. So then the proof was in the pudding. I started the company, and within a year we got found online by 3 major brands, which I cannot name drop. But that really told me that, okay, this is really a need and companies are looking for this.
So how do you find the boundaries of the niche when you start? If you're looking to specialize, how do you figure out what how deep the specialty should be?
So for us specifically, I made it I made a very I made a decision that we were not going to work with any brand which is not within the action sports and outdoor sports categories. So the broader mainstream sports is just not going to work for us. It's just a completely different industry, even though, people might think that sports is one industry, but then the reality is that mainstream sports versus action and outdoor sports are very, very, very different. And then even within outdoor sports, you have all those different sub-verticals, which are so different between them. So for us, it was like, I made this decision that any time which happened, that a brand comes to us that's maybe within, I don't know, football or European football or, rugby or whatever that could be, we do not take that project on, because it would mean diluting our internal capacity, our, value and all of that. And we will refer them to an agency who is in our network that we think that would be a better fit for them. So I think for anybody who is starting to look into what a niche should look like, then just have a very I guess, start with a dictionary definition of your niche. If you look at what an outdoor sports is, then you can see what it isn't. And so that's a very clear starting point.
Yeah. And I was just thinking about that too, one of the advantages must be that you can hire a team of translators or work with a pool of translators that is a lot more specialized. What does your hiring process looks like for a translator that wants to work for the Action Sports Translator? What should their linguistic skills and sport literacy look like? What impresses you?
Yeah, so obviously working within a niche is a double-edged sword because for us specifically, we only want to work with, which is also a promise to our clients, with people who also do those sports themselves. So this is also very difficult sometimes to find. For example, we had once to translate a manual about a belay device for sport climbing, which now if you don't climb, you already are probably wondering like, what are you talking about? So this is like a security device that you need to secure somebody who's climbing above you. And this is like very specific. And we had to do this, I think, in all languages of the European Union or something like that. So imagine having to find a climbing translator for Malta. If I remember correctly, Malta only has 500 translators in total. And then, you would really need to a miracle to find at least 2 translators to climb. But we did find them because luckily we have like a very big and specialized network. But sometimes we are in that scenario. Or another example was when we had to find I think it was Southern Sami team of translators. I don't know if you're familiar with this language. Is a minority language that's spoken in Sweden and in another couple of Scandinavian countries. And we had to find their specific profile, for winter sports. I mean, you can imagine it's like so difficult and it can take a long time. But this is the promise that we make to ourselves and to our clients. So we have a very strict selection process, meaning that we don't settle for a profile that, is maybe like the greatest translator alive, which is great. But unfortunately, if you don't practice that sport, then we are not able to work with you for the very simple reason that you're not part of that culture. So our vendor manager or head of vendor management manages everything from start to finish. We usually post in a bunch of different channels. I also post a lot on my LinkedIn. So, people will have maybe listened to this podcast. Yeah, will have come across that. And that's just because I have a very big network. So it gets like a lot of tractions as well. But we are, we also sometimes have to think outside of the box. So we have to really do some probably crazy type of searching, really looking in every possible place that you can possibly imagine outside of translation channels as well. And so then we have a very automated but still highly human system where we leverage AI and automation as much as possible for part of the process, but then there is always a human that's reading through the applications. And crucially, we always appreciate really people taking the time to drop their details with us and to want to work with us. So even like regardless of the outcome, everyone always hears back from us, and that's where we are always where we are leveraging the AI and automation. And then once we pass someone on to the next step that we think would be a good fit, then we have an extremely specialized set of testing and samples. So one thing when I was a translator, I remember I did not appreciate that if I was signing up with an agency as a marketing translator, they would often send me a bunch of random things about, from legal to pharmaceutical, but I'm trying to be a marketing translator. I don't want to be either of those things. So what we do here, if we bring on someone who is a surfer translator, we're not going to have them do a test on a random, I don't know, climbing or snowboarding sample. So that's like also super, super specialized. Of course, again, here we also use a lot of automation and templates, but then it's extremely specialized. And we put a lot of effort into the hiring process. We always make sure that it's a good cultural fit, background, technical skills, and so that's how we do it.
Yeah, so it's very specialized translators. Is there something specific in your workflow or the way you execute your translation work that looks different from maybe a regular LSP, you think? What are the adjustments that you make from that perspective?
So I don't know, I cannot speak for the regular LSPs. Of course, I know that a lot of LSPs, especially the bigger ones, will often work through other agencies as well, or they have these systems where it's first, how do you say this in English? First served. Like these
First
systems
come,
where they
first
send
serve?
out the job. Correct. Thank you very much. So whoever is there and available out of maybe like a very large pool of people, and and maybe who's cheaper, I don't know, they will just accept the job, and then of course the quality is going to be very, not very good. So we work in the very opposite way. We just make sure that we have a very good team from the very start. The client will select the samples that they want. Then we put together the team. We always update we create the tone of voice guidelines together with the client, glossaries, all of that at the beginning. And it's just like a constant work in progress where we put a lot of effort into this. And so, maybe from our side, the project management effort is most likely higher than a typical LSP, but also for us, that's kind of where the magic happens, where we really get integrated and become a partner that they trust. And
Maybe we can talk real quick about the cultural differences worldwide in this specific field, because a lot of times we talk about that kind of in a vacuum, but you have a very specific niche. So I'm kind of interested in finding out, how does authenticity differ from continent to continent in the outdoor communities? Is there a difference between Europe, the Americas, and Asia that jumps out at you?
so when it comes to authenticity, I wouldn't say maybe between continents, because, even when you look within Europe, you have all these fragmented markets. For sure, the way that a specific market will feel that something is authentic for them will be different to another market to a degree. We were mentioning earlier the Italian versus the German consumer, right? When you have the German consumer, I always like to make the example. Have you ever been on an Amazon product listing? If you look at the reviews and you see like the essay of the typical German consumer with like 20 paragraphs, pictures, extreme detail, and the updates over the course of like 12 months, right? Whereas the Italian is like maybe more emotionally driven and not so factually driven. So you also want to keep that in mind, but only to a degree, because at the end of the day, it's more about the sport and about how that sport is, developed also in that country or that market. That's another layer to that. When you think about a country like Switzerland, which is, primarily mountains, and then when you think about a country like Netherlands, and I'm only within Europe, that's, again, so fragmented. You really have to be careful how you phrase your marketing content and how authentic that's going to be for them. Because, for example, if you are saying in your marketing copy, use our, I don't know, our mountain equipment in your backyard because that's really good for your Swiss audience or even Austrian audience, but then it's not going to work for your Dutch audience, right? So it's like all these things that you really need to keep in mind when you are marketing, but just like speaking to your audience.
Yeah, maybe my favorite question today is around social media presence, and I have a finger in that as well. So I'm curious to know from you, how has your visibility on social media platforms changed the way that clients approach you and your work, maybe?
Social media, I mean, it's what I've built part of, like, it's how I've built a good portion of the business, right? Because we do get a lot of leads through Google, not through AI results, search results, but also I am very vocal on LinkedIn. So I do tend to post quite a lot, whether it's like just some adventure to keep it light or more specific business related content. And initially I was I was posting on LinkedIn as SaaS localization professional. And then when I decided to flip completely my profile and go on, like go full into the Action Sports Translator, then it's when I started like really talking about like the outdoor industry and the localization industry and what, connects them on LinkedIn. And that's a game changer for me specifically. I do have, a few things that I do to make sure that we always end up in the right feed of the right people, but it's definitely something where, it's just so much easier to connect with these people on a personal level. And also it's something that I'm actually interested in, right? I remember when I was working more in SaaS localization, my feed was full of SQL, MQL, all this like really markety, salesy SaaS language, which I was not really passionate about. And then getting onto LinkedIn was a drag. And now I'm like, oh, I log on to LinkedIn and I curated my feed. So I actually get to see people snowboarding, people climbing, people surfing, people riding a bike. And it's actually something where I feel like, oh, I can actually contribute with my own content, which is people we relate to, but also something that I enjoy commenting on people's posts.
You're taking a page out of the Red Bull marketing script, so to speak. And in that sense, I always think when I see your posts, what an ideal topic this is to be able to represent your business on LinkedIn. It's much easier to, like you said, to talk about action sports than it might be about something technical that might bore people. Do you feel that clients expect translators to also be ambassadors, or do they expect you as the Action Sports Translator to ambassador for the lifestyle that they sell?
Both. They definitely want to know that the people who we work with are into the sports themselves. But definitely it's a big, selling point for them to know that we as an agency do that, right? Like every single person that we work with, from myself to the project managers, to the account manager, to the translators, every single person that we work with has to be into outdoor sports. And that's like just the basic requirement for us. So for them, it's comforting to know that we do know what they're talking about and we understand the consumer because we are part of the same target audience that they are marketing to.
Yeah. And how do you manage the demands of running a business while staying active in the sport and staying healthy at the same time as well to run your business? How do you combine the two worlds? Because I see from your posts that you're quite often on the road. You're climbing, you're skiing, you're doing things. How does the balance work out for you? How do you manage that?
I must to be honest. I would say that running a company and also at this scale now, I don't have so much free time as I had before, right? So the balance is sometimes I have to make the balance out of not having a balance, meaning that although I would prefer not to mix the two, I will very often take my laptop up the mountain. Obviously, I'm not going to ski with my laptop in my backpack or snowboard, but I will leave it at the hut. So I will go maybe do 2 hours of snowboarding, then I'll sit at the hut. I will work for the morning, then I will take lunch break and I will go for another couple of laps. Or same thing if I'm going to go riding my bike or climbing, I'll take laptop to the gym. Or so it's really difficult to carve out a lot of free time to do all of the sports that I want to do. So I have to make it. I have to make it happen. But also it's really important that I keep doing these things because, that's the whole point of us as an agency, that we do these things. And also it's really good. It's important to have the time that you can also dedicate yourself to this, to your hobbies. So I basically just combine the two as much as I can. And so that's how I do it.
Yeah, we're a very technical brand, and so I want to talk a little bit about technology as well, if we can. We have managed to talk 25 minutes without touching on AI, so let's dip our toe in the water there real quick and check how the Action Sports Translator stays up on the newest technologies. What parts of your workflow can be automated, you think, and how can you do it without hurting quality in a very specialized field?
I mean, AI is advancing rapidly, right? So what wasn't possible at the beginning of the year now is maybe possible now. Doesn't mean that it's perfect. In our opinion, there is still a need for, and also in our client's opinion, there is still a need for specialized, the human touch. So while we are moving to a lot of AI processes, both internally, we want to make sure that internally our project managers and all of the people that we work internally with us feel empowered to use AI in their day-to-day business. We are also moving to, for example, we used to do a lot of e-commerce product copywriting. So writing the copy from scratch, that used to be a manual, not completely, but, largely manual process where the writer has to sit down, write the copy. And now we have implemented of course, much faster workflow where I think we are able to even do 60% faster now, right? With the writing from scratch part. And so we try to, whatever can be automated and made faster, we automate it and make it faster. We are constantly looking at what can be, improved, which AI is performance better at what, which workflow is better. So we're constantly doing that, but still at the end, there is very specific types of content where we don't need to have a human in the loop, but for the most part, especially for marketing copy, we do. And so we work very closely with our clients to help them also meet those business goals that they have coming from management, right? Where, yes, we do want still the human in the loop, but we are also recognizing that there are many ways that we can integrate AI in our workflows now. So that's the general idea of how we approach AI. It's not about replacing the translators or the writers, but it's about integrating the two and still delivering like the best quality that there is on the market for the type of work that we do, but still being like tech enabled in doing so.
Yeah, maybe one last question. Just because you touched upon it, I was interviewing Jaap van der Meer from Taos for the Agile Localization Podcast just a couple of weeks ago, and we discussed this topic a little bit, so I'd love to hear your take on it. Do you expect that specialized fine-tuned models could one day outperform general LLMs for this type of content? And is this something that you're actively thinking about implementing?
I don't know. We test a lot of what's out there already. I mean, you can fine-tune models already and make them a specialized model for like your specific content type and client. But we, at the moment, we prefer to use a RAG approach and feed that workflow because also it keeps changing, the content type, the project specifics keep changing. And so we prefer to have a much more flexible approach where, it's basically much more flexible for what we do.
Yeah, there's lots of functionalities you can use in Crowden to supplement your content that way and have AI help you out. Martina Russo, the half an hour has flown by. Thank you so very much for spending this time with us and educating a little bit more about the action sports field in translation. We wish you a wonderful Christmas and holiday season and a quick recovery from the action sports injuries that you have. Thank you very much, and hope our paths cross soon.
Likewise, thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Well, folks, that's a wrap on today's episode of the Agile Localization Podcast by Crowden. We hope you found it as insightful as we did. If you enjoyed today's conversation and want to learn more about how leading companies are managing their multilingual content efficiently, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. Thank you for tuning in. For more resources on how to streamline your localization process, visit crowden.com. See you next time.